to call the meeting of the City Council for Monday, September 14th to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved. And is it seconded?
Second.
Okay. Any errors, omissions, observations? We'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's carried. And a reminder to everybody to mute your microphones. There's some scraping noises going on from somebody's microphone.
Excuse me, Your Worship. I had a question about the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief. I had my hand up.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yes, I was looking at our Council 38, the Regional Greenways 2050 Draft Plan and Phase 2 engagement process. And I see that they're going to be going to the second engagement process. And I looked at the report and just wondering what the opportunities are for Council to have input into that. Will our Active Transportation Committee be having an opportunity, and the general public? I noted when I read the report, and there's some previously planned projects in Richmond and proposed new plans in Richmond. So I think that would be good for public to have input into that. Do you know about that?
Only what it says there. It talks about the public engagement process is going to be undertaken, but does any of our staff, can you comment on that? Or maybe Councillor Steves, you may have some input on that. Anyone have any information? All right, Councillor McPhail, we'll find that out for you and let you know.
Thank you.
Was there any other questions? Your hand is still up there, Linda. Any other questions that were on the minutes? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. If there can be a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting.
That's already done.
Oh, all right. The next is that there are no agenda additions and deletions.
All right, may I have a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, both carried. The reason I asked that is we do have a few participants here in the council chambers this evening. Is anybody here wanting to speak to us on anything on the agenda? Yes, ma'am. Come forward. Well, it'd be preferable if you took it off, but if you feel more comfortable leaving it on, you do that. I'll leave it up to you. Okay.
For item 15,
what item is, let's see, item 15. Yes, we can hear from you on that. Okay, so you have 5 minutes. I'll ask you to introduce yourself. You've already told us it's on item 15, so go ahead.
my name is Yvonne Bell. I live at 10431 Mortfield Road. I've lived in Richmond my whole life. And I'm speaking on item 15. It's regarding application by Polygon Talisman Park to create, anyways, you see it what it says on item 15. You know what it is. I've lived in this area, well, I used to live in the area my whole life, and I've gone to the church that surrounds this. And it is there's very, very large mature trees in this area. And one house that's a beautiful old heritage home. And I think that the opportunity for this area to save the tree for this plan would be to save the trees in the area, the mature trees, because I read that in their project overview that they would like to remove all trees that are on the site, which is 168 trees. And then off-site trees that are on the city boulevard, it says they want to remove 65. And then in neighboring properties, off-site trees, that's another 17. So a total of 250 trees, mature trees, would be removed. And I just can't believe that Polygon would be saying in this time of climate change, forest fires, that you would want to remove 200 and every single solitary tree on the site. That to me is not, I had hoped that Richmond would get away from this kind of development, and I don't see it happening. I see many properties, still good houses being ripped down, all the trees being ripped down, and putting on in an unsustainable home, a large home, and without the surrounding foliage. And I just think that the city of Richmond, should not approve this proposal as it is, because it is so unimaginative. I've looked at, that they sent copies to the church of what's going on, and when I look at it, it's not something, I mean, it just, to me, looks like a dead zone, and there's so much life in there right now, and I wish that all the councillors would come and take a look at it. Right in the center is a piece of farmland that has never had any kind of blacktop on it at all. So it's absolutely 100% grade A farmland. And I see that's where they want to put some kind of a field, but nothing I don't see anything about farming in the area, it's just, anyways, those are my thoughts, and I hope you don't approve this.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Wolf, did you have a question of this delegation? Your mute is on.
Yes, for the delegate. So saying that she lived in the area previously and regularly attends church in the area, and there were photos and stuff attached in the package. I'm not sure if Ms. Bell has borne witness to some other species that maybe are not documented in the pages, because there's a number of pages that show hawks on the tops of some of the trees in the area. Is there anything that you been able to see over the years that is not documented here?
Oh, definitely. There's many hawks and many songbirds. We've been able to hear them much more because of the plains. As you know, the plains are horrendous in this area, but just so much bird life that are in the surrounding trees, because they're so mature. The trees have been there for 70 years. I don't know how long they've been there for, 80 years maybe. And coyotes there. As I said, we saw the songbirds come back every year, and the Sunday school, I take them out to see if they can, what birds they can pick out. So, yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anybody else wanting to speak to us about anything on the agenda? Yes, sir.
No, I wanted to ask the delegate a question. I had my hand up.
Yes, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Hi, thank you, Ms. Bell. So you were saying, I was just counting as you were saying that about the trees that were going to come out, and you said that 65 boulevard trees, and you said 17 off-site trees. So that's quite a few. But when I was looking at the report on our page, CNCL 214, it states that there's protection of 30 existing trees that are on city along the site frontage, and there was a protection of an additional 34 city trees, and 14 were going to be relocated. So where are you getting the 17 off-site and the 65 boulevard trees? Where are you getting
I'm looking at, it says, as outlined in the above referenced city letter, a total of 65 trees on city property
Where are
adjacent.
you reading from?
Page 2. Sorry. This is Arborist Report Amendment number 2.
Okay, so it's in the arborist report that you're reading that.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All
That's
right.
really- thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, hi, my name is Robin Glover, representing Polygon Homes today.
Yes.
I'm here to answer any questions later on in the council agenda, but specifically item 15, if I could respond to comments from the previous speaker regarding trees.
Yeah, you're not going to get any questions later tonight. You may get them at public hearing, but not tonight.
Sure.
So go ahead.
Fair enough. It is true that we are planning to remove 168 of the existing trees. Of the 13 acres of the land assembly, almost 2 3/4 acres will be dedicated to the city of Richmond for road widening, for a new Ketcherson Road, for a new Brown Road, for widening of Canby, Garden City, and Sexsmith Road. So all those areas are dedicated. That does have an impact on existing trees. We are also dedicating a city park, over 1.17 acres in area, and that also has an impact on the trees, existing trees. One of the biggest challenges of the sites is the grading. So perimeter roads, infrastructure works has an impact on the grading of the site and prevents us from retaining more trees. Thank you.
But you are removing 168 trees and planting 2 for 1.
That's correct. We're replacing the for 2 for 1, and we are relocating some existing trees, and we are protecting 64 trees that we are retaining.
All right, there's a question from Councillor Green.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if the delegate can answer the question. In the park area on the site, would you be willing to do more work to look at being able to retain any trees in the park area?
We would be happy to look at that. To date, our conversations with parks have indicated that the grading isn't conducive to retaining more trees. That said, in the current design, we have included specimen-sized trees for location within the park, so oversized planting within the park from day one.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I'm just, if there's already specimen-sized trees there, can we do more work on trying to retain them?
We're happy to look at that with parks, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've heard the questions that have been raised. They've all been about the trees and the environment, etc. So it's not too late for you to continue working with staff to see, if this should go ahead between now and public hearing, see what you can do.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it may be pretty significant.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wanting to speak to us about an item on the agenda tonight? All right, may I have a motion to rise and report?
Move.
All right. All those in favor, opposed, carried. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have the receipt of the committee minutes. Housing Agreement Bylaw 136 to permit Richmond to secure affordable housing units at 3208 Carscallon Road. Funding agreement with Transport Canada Rail Safety Improvements Program for Williams Road, Shell Road intersection upgrade. The City Centre District Energy Utility Bylaw 9895 amendment and the amendment bylaw. Support for the BC Salmon Restoration Project in Sturgeon Banks. 13740 Westminster Highway, the unauthorized water course crossing and the decorative wall. Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, the Mineral Place Activity Center conversion to Arts Center, and finally the extension of the non-acceptance of cash transactions at City Hall. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? So it's moved and seconded. Okay, we've got some comments. Councillor Day.
Much, Mayor Brody. I'll be supporting everything on the consent agenda. Number 7 is the affordable housing units on Carscallon Road, and that's 322 units, but 41 of those are going to be affordable. And I just wanted to point out that while that's only 5% in today's world with our new rules that we put in place not that long ago, it's now 10%. So while it would be nice to get more than 41 units in the future, the public are going to see far more than 5%. Item number 8 is an agreement with Transport Canada to put up gates on Shell Road and Williams, which just happens to be where I live. I remember not long ago, 20 years ago, a father and a young daughter were killed in that area, and I'm really pleased to see this collaboration with Transport Canada to probably save people's lives. Item number 9 is the district energy utility expansion, and this is unbelievable. And we're going to actually reduce the greenhouse gases from 2007 levels down 80% by 2050. And I was really surprised when I looked at the map of the city center development. There's going to be 9 developments with a total of 4.6 million square feet. And it's like we're building a new town in the downtown core. Number 10, I'm really excited about, which is supporting the salmon restoration projects in Sturgeon Bank. But I did have a question of staff. There are 3 projects suggested that were prepared by South Coast Conservation Land Management, and we're applying for funding from the provincial and federal government, and they have about $142 million to give away. Does the city have the ability to pick a project they'd like to see funding for, or does the South Coast Conservation Land Management make that decision?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, right now we have been asked to support the entire expression of interest, which includes those 3 projects as they're broken down. We don't have right now the opportunity to pick what we would decide to pick within that expression of interest.
Okay, so they're all good projects, so we're happy with all 3.
That's correct.
Great, thank you so much. And then the next one is number 11, which is the somebody on Westminster Highway built a culvert and then a decorative wall, which is starting to fail. And I had a question of staff on this as well. Like, why would someone build something of this magnitude without a building permit? But the staff report states that the cost to remove it, if the city removes it, is $58,400. Has the owner been provided with this estimate? Are they aware that if they don't deal with this, this is the bill that I can expect to get?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I can't answer why they have done this, but yes, staff have been in close contact with the property owner, and they're fully aware of everything that's involved. Including the
$58,400 estimate?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. That's great. And then the next one is number 12, which is investing in Mineral Place Activity Center. And I again had a question of staff. We're applying for our piece of the pie for about $2.4 million. So that's the funding.
Sorry about that. That was me. Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. The Mineral Place Activity Center project, which used to be the senior center and is currently a homeless accommodations. If the application to investing in Canada's infrastructure is approved or is not approved, do we put the $749,000 that is being asked in item 3 additional funding back, or what happens with it?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, it is staff's intention to proceed with the $749,000 to complete the solar installation and the base building improvements.
Okay, so whether we get the grant or not, we're still spending an extra $749,000.
That is correct.
And this project, I understand, will last over 10 years. Is that right? Extend the life, I mean.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the initial project that Council approved a little while ago for $2.511 million was intended to be a lifespan of approximately 10 years. The addition of the solar and any of the base building repairs will last at least 10 years or beyond.
All right. Thank you for your help.
Councillor McNulty. Councillor Day, please lower your hand. Thank you. Councillor McNulty, you're muted, Bill.
Worship, just a couple matters that bear repeating. On the housing agreement on the affordable housing on Carscallon Road, it's good to see that not only we're getting the 41 low-income homes, but they are family-orientated. The developer has gone to 2 and 3 bedroom homes or units, and I think that's extremely important. We need more of them as opposed to 1 bedroom homes. So kudos to the developer. Just a quick question on the Transport Canada Railroad. That has been a problem for many, many years of people. And I guess I have a question of staff. I got a few comments the other day from people that said there was nothing wrong with it. Why are we getting involved in it, etc. But there have been many issues on that particular intersection. And my question is, how is this going to work once we get agreement to do something with it? Are we going to have flashing signal lights, timing lights? Just what's going to happen? Because when you come up Shell Road going north, it's very difficult to see the traffic coming from the east. Who can answer that? I think this is a great improvement myself.
Yeah. Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, absolutely. It'll be a really, really good improvement. It's going to include, I understand, gates that fold down over the railroad tracks when the trains are coming, and it will also include 2 sets of traffic signals on each of the roads on each side of the railroad tracks.
And will we have signals on Shell Road, at least coming north?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, absolutely.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you very much on that one. I have a question of staff, your worship, on the salmon restoration. I think it's a first-class project. I'm glad we've been asked to have some input, etc. But since this particular project is in our front yard, how much input will we really have on this? And how do we want to continue guiding this along? We've sent this comment to our committee on the environment and some of our other committees, because I think this is a very, very important one for us, just because they're going to do some infrastructure improvements. I think we need to do some conceptual things of what the Sturgeon Bank stands for.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, right now all projects are in the concept stage, so very, very early on in the platform. If the expression of interest does get approved for the 3 projects, staff will be engaged very thoroughly on all aspects of the project, and at that time we can bring to committees as needed. But we certainly will, at the staff level, be working on with the technical experts at the province as well as Raincoast on the delivery of the project and how that relates to our infrastructure.
Okay, excellent. Your worship, I'm just wondering if a letter from you to the appropriate people to say that we would like to make sure that we're communicated with on every aspect, and our staff have every opportunity to provide our vision forward on it.
Possibly we could ask staff to communicate
we do that and add that we write the appropriate bodies.
They're not our projects. We're just showing our support. So
no, I know, but in the support letter saying that we would like to have input along the way. We can always request it. If we don't get it, that's fine. But I think
staff take that under advisement?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Your Worship.
We want to give staff all the support we can going forward on this. This is an outstanding project, and one, if it's messed up, it has unbelievable consequences. Anyhow, my last item, Your Worship, is the conversion to the Arts Center. And could I ask Mr. Young, what's our timeline? And if we don't get any money, do we still have the $2.511 million budgeted and put away for this, for the arts groups to move in there? Because there's an expectation that they're going to get in there very shortly.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, yes, the council has already committed and hasn't in the bank, so to speak, 2.511 million committed to the project. As council is maybe aware, the building right now is currently being operated as an ERC for people that are homeless. We have an agreement with BC Housing right now that they're to be vacate that building by March 31st of 2021. So staff's intention at this time is to be in a spot where we have our tendering and everything completed, that we are able to start construction on site on April the 1st. And we expect at this time to be finish the work on or near the end of the year of 2021, possibly early 2022.
Mr. Young may not have the answer to this question, but thank you for that great answer. Where are these folks going to go? Has the city been given us any indication where they're going? Obviously, you know, they're leaving a good facility. They're still our folks. Where are they going?
I believe that was the subject of a closed report last week.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda, but I do have 3 items I'd like to speak to. I'll go with the order of number 8, number 11, and number 10. For number 8, the Transport Canada Rail Safety Improvement. I had heard from a resident that has lived in that area for a long time that there used to be train arms. I don't recall, but if there were, why were they taken down, and was there a plan to have them put back without having this added cost now?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I am not certain whether or not there were arms there in the past, but I can find that out if you'd like to know.
I think it would be vital going forward here, because if they were intended to be put back up or they've been stored somewhere, then it would be able to we'd be able to save some costs related to having new arms gates put up. So I'm not sure if it's warrants us referring this back to see if there is indeed arms or one of the rail companies that plan to do that.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Wolf, if there were arms there, it was outside of my memory. So it's you know, over a decade ago. We can find out, but I can't imagine that they're still stored anywhere.
Okay, and that area, like I mentioned, at general purposes, the McNair Secondary School community have mentioned that as being one of the dangerous areas for their kids to ride or walk to school. So I think it's one of the high priority areas to get safety improvements. And also the Terry Fox Run, our students typically run right adjacent to that intersection. So, and one I'm very familiar with. So thank you for that. That's all I have on that item. Number 11, related to the decorative wall and the damage done. I know there's 2 referrals outstanding, both related to fence materials. One of the referrals is ALR and specific, and the other one is not. Could staff comment 2 things? One, are those still coming back in Q3 that we're in right now? And would, in a future scenario, if this type of fence were not allowed and someone went ahead and built it anyway, would our staff looking into having kind of a way to recover costs so that we don't have to go site specific and into as much detail and take up staff time, or the report coming back might have set costs and set ways of recovering the damage that's done in cases like this?
Your Worship, I can respond to the timing on the referrals. We actually have a draft report, and we anticipate bringing regarding the adjustments to fencing in the agricultural areas, and also the possibility of changes in the urban areas. That'll be coming forward to Council in the next month. And that report won't specifically deal with unlawful construction, but which is what the situation that we have here. But typically, in the case of an unlawful construction, there would be a removal, there may be a prosecution, and there would be a cost recovery.
Great, I appreciate that. That's advisable that you'll plan ahead for that to be in there. So thank you. I'm not sure if Mr. Calkin wanted to add anything else. It looked like he was going to say something.
Through your worship, no, I think Mr. Rusek has covered it off. Thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate that. And then my final item I'd like to speak to is item number 10. I've had the fortunate ability to actually explore all of these areas. I put in about 100 kilometers in my motorized rowboat to explore the Sturgeon Banks, the North Jetty, and all the other areas around the river of all of Lulu Island, Mitchell Island, and Sea Island just in the last 2 weeks. And some of the findings from that and some of the questions that are very timely for this report, I'll just go into a few of them right now. I guess my main question here is the report looks into the funding, the $60,000 that we would be contributing. And then under the North Arm Jetty breaches, it talks about that the Rain Coast Conservation Foundation would construct 1, 2, 3 breaches. I'm curious, does our $60,000 contribution tie to any specific number of breaches? Like, would we get 2 breaches if it was an increased contribution, or is that outside of our contribution at this point?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Wolf, right now the in-kind contribution is just for technical support. These projects, again, are in the conceptual stage, so staff wrote in the report that we would offer a support for the projects and contribute in-kind contributions with opportunities in the future should the EOI get supported, the expression of interest get supported at a later date. So there may be opportunities at a later date to provide additional funding opportunities from the city based on the scope that's approved at that time.
All right, thank you for that. To follow up on that point, I'm curious if the city can provide perhaps some direction or preference for which breach would be the first one to be made. I know that of the 3 that are shown on the map, one of them is really tied very tightly to the Iona wastewater facility and the upgrade with that project. But the other 2, one is completely along the North Jetty, and one is at the end of McDonald Slough. I think both of those are high priority that we should be supporting and pushing for because they're a little bit more outside the Metro Vancouver project. I think that the one at the end of McDonald Slough might be a little more costly because there's a road that would be going over that one as opposed to the North Jetty, which is just a pile of rocks. And that would probably be an easier project to get through. So I would hope we would be pushing for the full amount and perhaps even more. And if funding is an issue with that, I hope that it would be brought back so that it could all be encompassing in this one project. Just a few more comments and questions related to this one. When I was in the Sturgeon Banks in this exact area where the what's called the target zone for sediment dispersion. This is on, where's my page? 113. You can't see the number because it's in the black of the ink, but 113. So my concern with this specific area that's been chosen is when you're at Gary Point or off Gary Point, you can see it's green on the map there, and you come out past Scotch Pond, there's a small little channel that even at low tide, kayaks, canoes, and rowboats like mine can get through there. Now, this deposition of sand, which it talks in the report, would be pumped rivers from river sand to this area. I would want to make sure that we're not blocking some of that access route because that's already a breach. Just like we're going to plan to do with the North Jetty, there's already a breach right there, which recreational boat users can use, but so can the wildlife that are swimming. So I would hope that orange rectangle wouldn't pinch off or have the sand get eroded off to the side and then actually block that important opening. Is there any insurance on that?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, right now, again, just in the conceptual stage, should this EOI or expression of interest proceed, the Conservation Management Authority will proceed with several modeling exercises that would support permitting and environmental regulation requirements. One of those would not allow for the blockage or seizing of any recreational navigational way. So we will make sure, if it were successful, to include that as a particular note from council.
Great thing. And then my very final quick point here is related to this is the top of page 110, talks about marsh vegetation dying. Typically ecosystems, they succeed into something else, but the report just kind of says the marsh vegetation has died. So is it kind of gone the way of a mudflat? Has it become more of a bog forest, as opposed to just dead because of toxic contaminants? Is there any follow-up? Because I know that general managers previously mentioned that there were plans coming on kind of a full revitalization for sturgeon banks. So our staff, I don't know, I didn't see it in the referral package, but is that something that staff are continuing to study and eventually bring some ideas to council to approve or not that relate to allowing some of the succession of the ecological community, and perhaps tie it in with the Terra Nova opening for salmon spawning channels and that type of thing? Is there a bigger project coming our way, and how far out is that?
Through your worship, just to clarify, that is, are you speaking to the Dike Master Plan work happening on the Barrier Island type project, or?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Ho here is able to speak to that process as well here.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the Barrier Islands was identified in Dike Master Plan Phase 1 and Phase 2 as a suggestion to look into, as there's definitely opportunities there to serve the flood protection initiatives for the city. So this would be corresponding directly with that plan.
Great, appreciate that. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
All right, let's see now, your hand is still up. Councillor McNulty, your hand is still up. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Just a few comments, Mr. Mayor. I won't hold us up too long. Just want to speak to number 12, the Minaru Place conversion project. I know I've been asking about this since the very first time it came to council. Can we not find any savings in the design work? Because honestly, there's places where the wall moves like 1.5 feet and the doorway slides over 5 feet. Can we not just use the existing footprint, save some money?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, we've worked closely with the user group, the arts people and the community services to determine what the best footprint would be to serve the arts community. And that was done through a professional architect and with community services. We certainly can, as we're going through the detailed design process, and also we're about to get into the tendering process, we will look for opportunities for cost savings, of course. And any cost savings, again, will be, will be just that savings to the project.
Okay, I'd really like to see some effort put into finding some cost savings. I really think that we can. I understand that the user groups have things that they want, but sometimes getting really close is okay. Especially in the kind of economic climate we're in now. I think it would be very understandable if we're not moving walls frivolously or moving a door frivolously. We can do better. And I thank staff for their work in advance working on that. And then my last comment then is just on item 13 with the extension of still not accepting cash at City Hall. I'm really happy to see this. One, for a safety standpoint, and two, for money laundering, which was briefly mentioned on page 174. And I find it really interesting that when we've told people that they can't use cash, that it ended up being that only 10 people were really kind of bent out of shape about not being able to pay in cash. So despite losing the vote in April 2019, 5-4, it turns out we can actually do without cash and make some progress in money laundering. So I'm happy about that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Au.
Your Worship, I am supporting everything on the consent agenda, but I have questions on 2 items. The first one is item 8 on the Shell Road intersection. Yes, I think this is one of the most dangerous intersections in our city, and I'm glad that this is going forward. But I want to ask staff, after completion of this project, who is going to be responsible for the operation of the signals? Are we in control, or is the railway company in charge of the operating the signals?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the signals will operate. The city will operate the signals, etc. But they will be interconnected with the railways system as well. So while we'll operate it, we will have to work in conjunction with the railway.
Okay, my second question is, who owns the equipment? The gate, the signals. Is it the city, or is it the rails? Because I think there's a cost of maintenance. So who's responsible for the cost of maintenance?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the city will own all the traffic signals. I'm not positive about the gates on the railroad. I can find out about that for you. But the city will own all the other traffic signal equipment for sure.
Okay, my final question on this topic is now on page CNCL 97, it says that the project will anticipate to begin in the first quarter of 2021, and it takes about a year to complete. Why would it take so long if it's just for the signals and putting up the gates?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, when we find working with the railway, it often takes more time than you think it's going to. That's how long we believe that it's going to take.
And during that period of time, so what is going to happen in the traffic changes? So how are we going to manage the traffic in the area because of the construction?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, there will be a traffic management plan generated as part of the project.
Okay, yeah, because I think a year is a long time. My other topic is item 10, the salmon restoration project. Now, we are at this conceptual stage. I'm happy that we support the concepts, and I think to contribute $60,000 in kind, staff time for 3 years is well justified. My question is, who is responsible for the design and the approval process? So is the city being part of it, or is it entirely up to the federal government?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, just in terms of the work or the funding or the actual work for the project?
The actual design and the approval of the design.
Through your worship to Councillor Au, yeah, exactly. Each identified organization for each project will be responsible as the lead for each project. So they would be securing regulatory approvals with the design concepts that would take into consideration stakeholder engagement as well as other requirements for design.
Okay. My second question is, now, it's good that we support the concept. The concept is good. But on page CNCL 111, the bottom last paragraph, the third paragraph from the bottom, staff also point out that there could be some obstacles or barriers for the implementation, because concepts may be good, but when we go on to the actual design and the implementation, there could be obstacles. Now, how are those obstacles, or if we come into these different kinds of opinion in terms of priority, design, or whatever, how is it going to be resolved? Is there a way that we can resolve the difference of opinion or difference in priorities and even difference of design?
Through your worship, Councillor, absolutely. There's going to be an extensive stakeholder engagement process for each one of these, specifically the project on Sturgeon Bank. That comment in the report references the requirements needed to engage in a project in a wildlife management area, which Sturgeon Bank is. All of the permits that are required should the projects proceed would require stakeholder engagement as well as a technical advisory committee, which the city would be sitting on. And then any disagreement with concepts or what have you, any preferences could be ironed out or spoke of at those times and through the permitting process and working together collaboratively.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I know that we are going to provide a technical support to the project if it's being approved, and I hope that it's not just we doing the work for them, but I think we have meaningful inputs and participation in the design and the implementation. Now, my final question is, when will the result comes back? When do we know whether or not this express of interest application is approved? Is there a date?
Through your worship to Councillor, there's no date that was actually specified to me. The due date is tomorrow for the application to be submitted. Staff will follow up on the expected date for approval and could follow up with memorandum at that time on the results.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda. And really, I just have a question on number 8, the funding agreement with Transport Canada for the work at Williams and Shell. And it's great that our grant application was successful and that the $700,000 project, we will be receiving $547,000. And I think that's great. And congratulations to staff for putting in such a great application. One of my questions you did already answer, given the scope of work and that it's going to take a year, that there will be a traffic management plan, so that's good. Now, will there be neighborhood notification of the capital project?
Through your worship to Councillor McPhail, yes, there will.
Thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Steves.
Thank you. I just want to comment on item 10. While I will support it, I am very, very skeptical of what they're planning for Sturgeon Bank. I think that what they're planning probably will not work and will simply cost a lot of money. Where if those that were in council 10 years ago when we acquired the land at Terra Nova from the Grower family, we did it with Ducks Unlimited, and they came in and they bulldozed all the habitat was there, the logs that were there, but all the rotting debris that all the creatures lived in underneath the logs was bulldozed away, and they were clearing the marsh. Well, guess what, folks? The logs have moved back in, but it's going to take another 20 or 30 years for the logs to rot back to recreate the habitat that they destroyed. So it was a waste of time. And I see the same thing happening here. I opposed the closure of the Steveston Jetty back in 1978 when the Port of the Day went and filled it all in to channelize the river. We had major protests at that time over channelization. And the DFO, actually it was biologists from Rifle Bird Sanctuary came over, and I walked out with them around 1978, and we established an area that they came every 10 years and measured how much of the land eroded away. The last time I went out with the biologists was 2010. At that time, they were silenced by the federal government. They weren't allowed to speak about it, but so much had washed away. So they told me, and then I told the scientists, and that's when we had the scientists from Holland come over and plan sea berms out there. And I guess the problem I have is I think that what we came up with at that time with all the input as to how it was eroding away was that the sea berms were the ideal solution. If they're simply going to put in mud and sand without any way of holding it together and without literally taking that jetty out completely, or at least lowering it enough for water to flow over all the time, then we'll just simply watch it wash away again. So I'm very skeptical of what they're planning. I think we need to have a major input into the modeling. Michael mentioned going out around in a boat. There's a major slough that when we looked at it 10 years ago, and I can even use their names now, Don Trasui was one of the biologists from Rifle. He's retired and moved to the Kootenays. Came out there, and there's a major slough that when we planned to have a spawning channel slough at Terra Nova, their recommendation was that we put sand in the bottom of the slough that comes right through the area that they want to fill. Let's say it's about 20 or 30 feet wide and about 10 feet deep and ideal for spawning salmon as it gets closer to the shore. So there's so much out there, and I don't think they know what they're doing. So I'm somewhat skeptical about it. I will support it going ahead, assuming that we'll have major input into the modeling as it proceeds. But if we don't, I can just see the whole thing being wasted, and the next 20 or 30 years, people can watch what they do wash away.
All right, thank you very much. I think those are all the speakers at this point. So, yeah, Harold, your hand was up. So with that on the consent agenda, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to the items which have been removed from the consent agenda. Number 14 is the application by Daniel Planning Consultants for an agricultural land reserve subdivision at 3031 Number 7 Road. The General Purposes Committee recommends that the application for an agricultural land reserve subdivision at 3031 Number 7 Road be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission, and I would so move. Is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, so it's moved and it is seconded. Just to frame what's bound to be some discussion on this one, generally, if you are in the agricultural land reserve, you can't subdivide. But there are very limited circumstances where the Agricultural Land Commission will consider that, and one of them is presented here for this property, which is in the range of 19 acres. And the ambition, as we've been told by the farm family is a long-standing farm family, been here, greater family's been here 100 years. But this particular parcel has been owned in the family since 1971. It was originally in a trust, and that got wound out eventually. The idea is that the person and his wife, the man and his wife who are working the farm, want to subdivide the property so that they can have a clear title property and live there in retirement and give the property or transfer the property to their children. They have apparently have 4 children, late 20s, early 30s, all of them actively work on the farm, and there's other farm properties in this family. The large parcel, the idea is there's a farmhouse there. They want to subdivide just over 3 acres for that, the farmhouse and what's around it. And that's about, as I said, that's about 3 acres. And then subdivided in the back would be the larger parcel of around 15 acres. And that would be put into cranberries by members of the family, the younger generation. Now, in order to get financing for the younger generation, they need to have title in their names, which will happen. And that will leave a situation where a very substantial amount of financing will be raised based on the larger parcel being used as security. And there will be a subdivision of where the farmhouse is, the 3 acres, and the current farmer and his wife will be able to live there, but they won't have to go onto the mortgage. They won't have to farm it if they don't want. That will be left to the rest of the family. There is a provision that unless on the house parcel, call it the small one, unless there was a death, the property cannot, because of a covenant that will be registered, they can't sell that property within 5 years. So that's the basic scenario. To my mind, if we right now that the larger parcel is simply in grass, is in hay, forage crops. So my attitude is that if we want farmers to farm the property and we want farm property to be farmed, we need to support it. And after the multi-generations of this particular family who have lived there. It does take a certain amount of good faith, but to my mind, that they have more than demonstrated that. So I'll be supporting this. We do have some other speakers. We've got Councillor Day.
Very much, Mayor Brody. Yeah, I voted against this in General Purposes Committee, and I will be voting against it again today. And the reason being is that they do not need to subdivide the property in order to mortgage the property to farm it. All you have to do, and I've done this with my parents, is you just add the children's names to the property, and then it could be mortgaged and the property could be farmed. And if the parents wanted to leave, once again, the property could be mortgaged and then pay out the parents. Subdivision is not necessary. Now, if you look to page CNCL 182, it shows, a map of the property. And there's another house located on number 7 Road, just kitty corner to this one. And they have wisely located the house right on 7 Road. So if they ever want to sell off part of their property, it would never be a problem. Whereas this house was built, I don't know how many hundreds of feet back from number 7 Road. So if they had just built the house, and if they were serious about farming, they would have built the house closer to number 7 Road to allow for more farming. The way this subdivision, which is on page CNCL 188, is set up, is you've got this long, skinny lot that won't be farmed along with the house at the back part. It just doesn't make any sense. So if the owners were prepared to move the house up to number 7 Road, which is where the other house and the neighboring property is, then I could maybe buy the subdivision. But instead, you're going to have an estate house with 3.2 acres. It's not necessary. If they were serious about farming, I think that you'd be able to farm more. Like, for instance, so the other thing is, if I just want to ask one question of staff. Bridgeport Road does not go through, I believe, at this time. Is there any plans for that to become a farm road or an access road at any point?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, should Bridgeport Road be open to general traffic, that would require a report to council. At present, there are no plans to open up that road to general traffic.
All right, so is it true then that they can't access this property from even a farm road? They have to access it from number 7 Road?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the city does enter into license agreements to allow undeveloped roads within the ALR to be used for farm access. Farm access would not provide the ability for a house to be constructed on the property. From an emergency response perspective, the property does require a driveway to number 7 Road.
Yeah, I believe that the purpose of the Agricultural Land Commission is to encourage farming. And in this case, I believe that if they are not willing to reduce the size of the home plate, that's not encouraging farming. And so while I totally understand succession, creative financing and creative ownership agreements could be the alternative to this particular project. And then everybody can get what they want. I do have one other question, and that is that from what I see from the motion, we are being asked to just forward this to the Agricultural Land Commission without a decision by council to support it or reject it. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, should council choose to forward the application to the ALC for their consideration, that is the decision from council. Should council deny the application, it would fall at this point off the table.
Okay, well, if the vote stands as it was at General Purposes Committee meeting and a 3 negative and the rest 4, then I would like the submission to include the vote of council so that the Agricultural Land Commission can see that it was not a unanimous decision. And I would move that amendment later on after other discussion. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you. I'll just have a few points to add to that. First off, the ability for future farmers in Richmond to farm typically involves living near the farm or having access to equipment. So having that back part of the property kind of incorporated with all the other farm areas makes it very challenging in the future, and almost hard to access without reconfiguring farm roads or driveways to actually have a house where a young farmer family and their workers can live and work the land. At this time, we're seeing a lot of uncertainty where we're getting our food from. There's a lot of lands that are burning and mudslides that have happened in the last few years. We're not going to be able to rely on other countries and jurisdictions to provide our food. We're going to need to find ways to do that locally, and with strategies like our Farming First and agricultural viability, this goes against, in my opinion, the way to provide food security for the future Richmond residents. I also agree with Councillor Day that there are other ways to help get people's names on title for financing. If cranberries are such a lucrative crop, we now have them turn into juice, not just the fruit. We also have white cranberry, not just red, so they can have two harvests, the early ones that don't produce the red pigments yet. So there's a lot of money made in cranberries, and I support families making conversions to what is profitable and what the world needs to eat and get nutrients from. But what this does is, I believe, sets a precedent that the next a proposal that might not be a long-term family in Richmond that has the experience and support for the community like this family does, that they could apply, and council says, well, if we supported the last one, why would we change our mind now? So I really feel this sets a dangerous precedent going forward, and those are my comments why I will remain opposed to this. Thank you.
Councillor Steves.
No, thank you. I will be supporting it. When we brought in the agricultural land reserve, we made a commitment to the farmers. At that time, most of the farm income wasn't good. The farmers depended upon selling their farm when they retired, and quite often they were looking at selling them for residential use. And that's the reason we brought in the agricultural land reserve. So what we did, we said that if you owned the land before 1972, we will permit you to subdivide out one lot for the person that owned the land before 1972. So literally all across BC, dozens and dozens of farms have had the opportunity to subdivide out that one lot for the senior member of the family. None have happened in Richmond, I think, for 20 or 30 years, but we did have quite a few at the very beginning. It just so happens this person was an owner in 1972 that was very, very young. But in my opinion, this person is entitled, just the same as all the other owners before him, to have that subdivision go through based on how the agricultural land reserve was written and still stands today. This does not mean that somebody that didn't own the land before 1972 should be able to come forward and say, well, they got their land subdivided off, why can't I? It was a specific amendment or a specific clause in the Agricultural Land Reserve Act that provided for those owners that owned the land prior to 1972 to get an extra benefit from the property because we were freezing their land, supposedly at that time we thought, into agriculture forever. So I think that, and the people in East Richmond, the ones that haven't got big mega houses on them like we have around number 2 Road and Stevenson Highway, and that are generally real farmers and are cognizant of the reasons that the Agricultural Land Reserve was brought in the first place. So I have no hesitation in supporting this one, but I would not support one where the owner didn't own the land prior to 1972.
Councillor Green. Harold, your hand is still up.
Thank you. I just have a few comments. I was opposed to this in general purposes, and I remain opposed. First off, I'd like to say that this subdivision is creating a residential parcel of about 3 acres. Oops, did I freeze? So it creates a residential parcel of about 3 acres. It's never going to be farmed, so we're creating residential land out of farmland. And if you look at 188, it has a drawing of what the subdivision is going to be, and there is an allowance for a driveway at the front, so that there can be driveway access in the future, so that you can build a house. That's leaving the door wide open. All somebody has to do is just outlast council and get the covenant discharged and get a house built on there. Council historically has got a terrible record with houses and farmland. And the issue that has been presented to us by the applicant is one of financing. Financing isn't solved by council. Financing is solved by lawyers and accountants. That's not farming. It's not a farming application. So I will be opposed. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting the recommendation on the floor. I don't think it's our role to give people advice on how to manage their finances or, how to go about and get credit. At General Purposes Committee, the owner provided answers to all the questions that he was asked, and he was asked a lot of questions. And I'm satisfied that the application is part of a farm succession planning, and that the transfer will go to his children, the next generation of farmers. And he told us he has 4 children who are all involved in the farm today. The Food Security and Agricultural Advisory Committee supported this application. And I think at the end of the day, it's the ALC who is going to have the final say. And I think it should go forward to them to let them have the final decision. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting this as I did at General Purposes Committee. I think this is a solid plan. I think it's got a reasonable no-build covenant on it. I think any council at any time could change the rules going forward, but it still has to go forward to the ALC no matter what happens to it anyway. To suggest that it's a food security issue is, I think, a little bit outlandish. We produce 50 million pounds of cranberries here in Richmond every year. And so I don't think anyone's doing their fair share to eat that 50 million pounds at their house. Maybe my son is because he eats them every day, but I don't think that's where our food security is. To suggest that a farmer should be growing something else on that land is outlandish, particularly by someone who votes against every request by farmers to add fill to their land to grow anything when they've got underwater land. I think we should not be deciding how farmers should live. I don't think we should be deciding what they should farm on their land. And I don't think we should do their succession planning for them. And for me to suggest, for what I heard tonight, for someone to suggest that the May family is not serious about farming is the most insulting statement I've heard today. This family's owned this land since prior to the Agricultural Land Reserve was brought in. I think they have a plan to have succession, to continue farming it, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Howe.
I'll be supporting the approval. It's not that I don't have questions and concerns, as I have raised a few questions in General Purpose Committee meeting. I'm concerned that this would become a separation so that the 3 acres of land can become a residential land in the future. And also, I realize that there are other means of financing if the family wants to go forward with farming. However, I think the most important point is that the policy made in 1972 saying that the farmer in that kind of situation, they're entitled to have the subdivision. I think we have to honor that. And we should not make things difficult for people, saying that, oh, we don't trust you because of this or that. I think if they are entitled to that and they have a good track record as a farmer, I think we have to act in good faith, as they are also acting in good faith. So I would support this application.
Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with a number of the comments that were made earlier, and I thank Councillor Steves for giving us the historical perspective. It's rather interesting to hear some of the rhetoric of those who really believe in farming in Richmond to see where it's going. It's if Randall May, who came here in 1897, was alive, I guess he'd roll over in his grave, knowing that as a pioneer, they continued to farm that whole area over there, and they still farm it. These are bona fide farmers, and what they do. Unfortunately, we're hearing from the farming community that their children don't want to continue on the way of life. And in this case, we've got a family that does want to carry on the way of life of a farmer. And I think we should be supporting them. I'm not going to comment on some of the rhetoric I heard because it's not our place to be discussing this. Our job is to decide whether this should go to the ALC to make a decision. And regardless of what we do, the ALC can make their decision the way they seem fit. And for that reason, and many of the reasons that have been expounded here tonight, I'm going to support it going forward and let them go forward. I guess what we should be doing is telling the Mays what they should be farming. And don't worry about it, whether they move the house or not. I thank them for farming. They are not like we've seen, where people buy land and build mega homes and then close off the back and don't bother farming. So I think if we want to keep Richmond 42% agriculture, then we should continue to support them. So in this case, I'll be supporting them.
Bill, you can put your hand down. So with that, I'm going to call the question on the motion on this number 7 road property. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillors Day, Wolf, Green opposed.
And I'd like to have the vote added to the submission, please, Mayor Brody.
Staff can take that under advisement.
I'd like to make a motion that we add to the submission the council vote, please.
Is that seconded? It's seconded. I'm going to call the question. Do you want to add in the vote into the letter to the ALC? All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Lou, McNulty, McPhail, and the mayor opposed. So that's carried. All right. I now go, Councillor Day, your hand is still up.
Oh, sorry.
I'm now going to number 15. I won't read it out. It's just a bunch of addresses, really. It's the application by Polygon Talisman Park Limited to create the residential, limited commercial, etc. village, and on it goes. It's in the agenda. It's on Canby, Sexsmith, and more on Sexsmith. And so I will move the motion as set out in number 15 on the agenda. Is there a seconder? It is now seconded. Just in anticipation of a certain amount of discussion on this, the key points of this, this is a large set of parcels that are being rezoned and redeveloped or developed. There's going to be a 3-phase mid-rise and high-rise, high-density mixed-use development with 1.17 acres of city-owned park and half an acre of secured public open space. Total floor area of 1.1 million square feet. 112,000 of which roughly is low-end market rental, affordable housing units. Then we have 57,000 square feet of market rental housing in a standalone building. The first one, the affordable housing units, were in a standalone building as well. Then we have 990,000 square feet of market strata housing, 84 square feet of commercial space, 28,000 square feet of indoor amenity space provided over the 3 phases, and approximately 150 affordable housing units, 65 market rental housing units, and 1,000, just over 1,000 market strata housing units. So it's a very large development, which I will be supporting. Councillor Green.
Thank you. I had a question if we can direct staff to work with the applicant to improve their tree retention program, in particular in the park dedication, the 1.2 acres.
I believe staff has already said that they can work with the applicant on that between now and the public hearing.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Craig, you have something further?
Through your worship, we're happy to engage in discussions with the applicant regarding tree retention and possible relocations. I would just like to point out for council's attention that in terms of the proposed park, there are no trees currently located on that portion of the site. So there would be no retention of trees within the parkland. We're looking at potential relocation of trees to the parkland.
All right. All right, Councillor Day.
Just was also hoping when we come back to public hearing, if we could just have more clarification on the numbers of trees. We had a speaker come forward and talk about there was going to be 250 trees to be removed, but the applicant said it was 168 trees. So I'd like clarification on that as we move forward to public hearing.
Staff, I'm sure will take that under advisement. Councillor Wolf. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. So being someone who's quite observant at property development on large scale in Richmond, Polygon is typically the one that follows this exact strategy, and what a surprise it's them again. They wipe the slate clean. They choose to put parks in areas where there is no park value. There's easy abilities to shave off part of the development and the loading and the impact to the land, but it's like they have a Etch-a-Sketch or whatever, and they shake it and it's all blank, and they can do whatever they want and put things wherever they want. That's not the way nature has intended things to be done, and it's clearly with evidence from our residents. This is an area that in the middle of our large city still is able to keep some of the rare predatory birds, finding hunting grounds and spaces to be able to live in existence with us, with the greedy nature that we take every space up, remove all the trees. And yes, I am clearly aware that there's a 2-for-1 replacement, but I know many Polygon properties where trees, months after months, years after years, just start to disappear because they die. And once they're past the expiration date on how long a tree has to live, they don't have to put them back. And you never see those new trees take any even resemblance of the size and magnitude and habitat features of the trees that were once there. This takes us in the wrong direction when we're trying to have sustainability and leadership. This is only going to step 2, maybe a part of it will have step 3, step code 3 to it. The statement here on barn owl hunting habitat compensation, there is no value left to this area once Polygon gets a hold of it, as the plan clearly states. The one good news is soil from the land. Like the delegate said, there's some high quality agricultural soil that's likely in there, and one of the only bright spots I see in this whole report is some of that soil, if it is indeed clean and suitable, will go to the Garden City lands and live on to provide agricultural use as well as habitat enhancement in that area. But unfortunately, everything gets pushed off the development site, and when we see projects like this and they accumulate all these land masses, I'm very curious how much of an extent the qualified environmental officer went into the existing properties, and rather than just doing 2 spot checks over a year, doesn't cut it, and not being able to see a nest from the ground on those 2 days is not acceptable. We're at a time when biodiversity is crashing all around us, and we're not taking the leadership and providing either protection of space or proper compensation. All this compensation gets shot elsewhere, and not in the spot where nature has intended it to be for the long term. So with that, as typical, I guess, not approving fill on agricultural land. I guess this maybe falls into the boat where some people in our city have a very strong opinion on what needs to be done for us going forward. And I'm going to be very pleased to take a vote in opposition here in support of all those residents. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf, you talked about all these trees disappearing and trees dying. I'm sure that you could make a list of where you see such a phenomenon, provide it to staff, and they would be pleased to forward it on to Polygon. I'm sure we should give them a chance to answer that.
I don't think it's. At this point, I don't need the delegate to speak or staff to respond. I know staff are working diligently on a referral on the tree protection bylaw for private property. So hopefully we'll see something in there. Thanks.
Well, you just made some specific suggestions about a certain applicant, and I think that it's only fair that you support that with an actual list where you have seen this phenomenon develop, and then give Polygon a chance to respond. And if they don't respond accordingly in a positive manner, then I think your comments are probably well taken. But you've got to get the ball rolling, and let's see the list.
But
So
many of
with
these
that,
sites are past the point where trees don't have to be retained anymore. They're past the 2 years of when they were planted. So,
no, sorry. You said what you said, and you did make the point about the timing of it. You said it in a very critical way. You mean for us to take this into account and to turn down this application as a result. And I'm saying that those are all fair comments if they're fair. And I would like you to provide that list to staff and give Polygon a chance to reply to it. And I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is carried with Councillor Wolf and Councillor Green opposed. That brings us to public announcements. First of all, from the closed council meeting this afternoon, the name Hummingbird Child Care Center was selected for the city's child care facility being constructed 6899 Pearson Way. Then we have a single-use plastics bylaw. You may remember we brought this in, at least got the ball rolling just over a year ago. Richmond City Hall was the site for an important announcement by BC Minister for Environment and Climate Change Strategy, the Honourable George Heyman, on Saturday. He announced the provincial approval for our bylaw to ban single-use plastics across the city. This is a significant step in protecting our environment and removing about 35 million foam food containers, plastic straws, and plastic grocery bags from our garbage every year. While an important initiative, given the current situation due to COVID-19 and the pressures it is imposing on many businesses, we will be assessing the timing of implementing our bylaw. For information on Richmond's single-use plastics and other items bylaw, including a discussion guide, go to richmond.ca/single-use. And I just want to emphasize on that for our own bylaw. I spoke to staff about the process going forward from here. Staff will eventually be bringing back to council the results of the consultation that they undertook, and then the matter can proceed, but we have to be very careful, I think you'd agree, about the timing of this type of approach. Then we have our street banner contest this Friday, September 18th. That's the deadline for submissions to our 28th Street Banner Contest. A range of artistic media, including photography, graphic design, collage, watercolor, and oil painting, are welcome from Richmond residents. If you want to know the rules and the guidelines to view the themes and submit entries, go to the Richmond's website /banners. And then at the Mineral Center for Active Living, boy, we waited a long time for this one. The City of Richmond will open its new state-of-the-art indoor aquatic center at the Mineral Center for Active Living on Monday, September 21st. That's this coming Monday. Pre-registration is now open and required. A limited number of drop-in spaces may be available. So we encourage you to register for a spot and come and experience this amazing aquatic center for yourself. For more information, again, you can go to our website. A reminder about the property tax deadline. A reminder that the penalty deadline for property taxes is drawing near. Those who have not paid their property taxes or claimed their homeowner grant, if they're eligible, by Wednesday, September 30th, will be subject to a 10% penalty after that date. We encourage all residents and businesses who have not done so yet to pay their taxes by then. That is September 30th. Several options are available to pay, including either by check or credit card at City Hall, online through the city website, or at your financial institution. So for more information, go to our website /tax. And then, as we discussed taxes, property taxes, the city's annual property tax sale will take place on Monday, September 28th at 10 o'clock in the morning. Will be held at the Mineral Center for Active Living, and due to COVID-19 safety measures, social distancing requirements will be in place. Details on the property subject to the sale and other information will be released in the next few days. And finally, restoring Richmond. A reminder that the city continues to carefully restore some services and access to facilities and amenities in a safe and controlled manner. We recently reopened fitness centers at South Arm and Thompson Community Centers and Mineral Center for Active Living. You can view and register for all programs, swim and exercise sessions by visiting the Richmond website /register. All right, with that, we will go to bylaws for adoption, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
Move adoption.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And then we have the development permit panel, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Worship. Item 16, there are 2 recommendations for Council's consideration. Recommendation 1, that the minutes of the Development Permit Panel meeting held on July 29th and the Chair's report for the Development Permit Panel meetings held on May 27th and June 10th be received for information, and that the recommendation of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development permit for the property at 17720 River Road be endorsed and the permit so issued.
So moved.
That's moved and seconded. We have some questions. First of all, Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regards to number 2, so there's several meeting minutes in our package. I was wondering if staff could give us a bit of an overview so that I can have it clear in my mind. Because there's been changes made along the way, and if we could just get an overview of where we are now.
Through Your Worship to Councillor McPhail, I'll attempt to do so. The project before the council was originally presented to the development permit panel in May 27th of 2020. The proposal presented at that time included 2 variances associated with the development permit. One was for the farm home plate increase. The other was for a building height increase. After consideration by the panel at the meeting on May 27th, that application was referred back to staff to work with the applicant on investigation related to the building height variance and to consider securing a covenant with respect to tenants for the secondary suite, which was proposed in the house. A revised report was presented to the development permit panel on June 10th that removed the height variance request, and we were able to secure a covenant restricting tenants of the suite to farm labor working on the farm operation or immediate family members of the applicant. That revised proposal is what was endorsed by the development permit panel and is before council tonight for their consideration.
Thank you.
Can you please describe, Mr. Craig, can you describe this property? What type of property are we talking about?
Through your worship, the property is an agriculturally zoned property within the ALR. The majority of the site is designated as an environmentally sensitive area. The purpose of the development permit was to have a residential development single-family home constructed within a portion of the site designated as an environmentally sensitive area.
All right. Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship. I want to ask a question about the restrictive covenant, right, or the legal agreement about restricting the tenants of this Central Street to farm workers or immediate family of the property owner. I wonder, whether or not we need to have that kind of legal agreement. Do we not have sufficient protection by our general regulations that farmhouses or secondary suites on a farmhouse property is already limited to tenants who are working on a farm or with the family? So, why is the need here that we need to have this kind of restrictive covenant?
Your Worship, if I may respond to that.
Yes, please.
I think it's probably more appropriate, Councillor Au, that I respond to that, as I chaired both meetings of the development permit panel, and staff did not originally ask for a covenant. So when we looked at the proposal the first time, it seemed to the panel that both of the variances could actually be relatively easily avoided through some redesign. But it was clear that the applicant's preference was not to do that. Regarding the occupancy of the suite, the variance that's associated with the suite is a larger house footprint than the bylaw allows. There is nothing in the zoning that would currently restrict the occupancy of that suite in the way that was presented to the panel. So we didn't impose a covenant on the applicant. We asked staff to investigate that with the applicant. The applicant came back and had agreed to it. So from the panel's point of view, because of the long-term nature, like once the house is built, it's there for 50 years, probably more. It's a long-term variance that would be in place. And we thought that the restrictive covenant was an appropriate tool to ensure that that variance, that the utilisation of the area subject to the variance was as presented and in accordance with farming. I would note that covenants are commonly used in these situations, and in fact, the earlier application for the agricultural subdivision actually involved a covenant. I do understand, though, not through direct discussion, but I'm aware that since the second meeting of the permit panel, where the applicant did not express any concerns to the panel, but I am aware that the applicant has subsequently indicated that he's not happy with having agreed to the restrictive covenant. But from the panel's point of view, yes, it's an appropriate management mechanism.
Further question. So I just want to make sure that this won't become a practice that, in other applications we would put into this kind of restriction. So is it going to be a practice?
Well, I'll speak for from my role as the panel. It's not a practice. Each application is evaluated on a site-specific basis. So it's not necessarily routine, if that's what you mean. But as I noted, by coincidence, we have another agricultural application on the agenda tonight. And in that case, the applicant agreed to a covenant and seems quite happy with the commitment.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Councillor McPhail.
I already spoke, sorry.
All right. Councillor Wolf.
Yes, just a quick question to staff on the, I know the building height is no longer proposed since the last meeting, the variance of the building height. But I'm curious, I know we've for all types of developments, we've approved variances. And in this one, the diagram of the design for the house, it's just the peak of the upper floor that would go to that height. We're not talking about a big box house that has a whole floor up at that added height. I'm curious, are there other examples where the on farm agricultural zone parcels we've approved the variance for the upper floor to I guess request and receive a variance in this nature, where it's not the whole building up there, it's just like a part of the center of the roof.
Again, I'll respond to that because really it was the panel that queried and had concern about the height variance. I don't recall. Wayne may recall other variances to agricultural houses for height. Yes, you're right. It's not the whole second floor. It's in fact some relatively small areas. But that's why it was actually quite easy to redesign it out. So I'll give you an example. The height was driven by a 23-foot maximum ceiling height. So in order to avoid a height variance, that ceiling was reduced to 21 feet high, quite a high ceiling. Similarly, the roof pitch was very steep at 15-12, better than 1-to-1. The variance was avoided by moving to a 12-12 pitch. Minor redesign. And there was also, I believe, a chimney, which was decorative, not functional in nature. And again, so you're right that there were relatively small bits of the house that contravened the height. So that is maybe less of an issue than if you had an entire sort of floor plate at the second level. But on the other hand, it also made it really quite easy to avoid the variance altogether without losing the integrity of the project. And also, I might add, to avoid creating a precedent where others would seek variances without a really strong justification.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
On page CNCL 382, it states that the alternative location for the secondary suite, which would not require a variance, was discussed. And then it came back on June 10th and the revised house design was considered, but the revised design retained the proposed variance to increase the maximum house size. I'm just wondering, I mean, you see in a lot of older farmhouses where they have a little bit more height because they've got, lower floors. Maybe they don't have 17-foot ceilings, but they're able to accommodate on a smaller footprint a secondary suite. Why were we able to get rid of the variance for the height, but we weren't able to get rid of the variance of the house size? And could you please tell me how many square feet is the house?
Your Worship, if I may, I'll ask Wayne to respond to that because it was staff, not the panel, that had those detailed discussions with the applicant.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, in terms of the secondary suite location, the applicant's pursuing a specific house design which would have the principal residence, which they intend to live in with habitable space at grade, as well as the farm or the secondary suite with habitable space at grade, so that the tenants would have access to the farm, easy access to the farm. In terms of the variance, it's a 12% variance. Bear with me, I'll have to do some math. The maximum house size is 4,300 square feet. Under the current bylaw, that would allow for 2,500 square feet at grade.
So it's below the 4,300 square feet?
Wayne?
We're looking at approximately 500 square feet of additional space on the ground floor.
Okay, is it still under the 4,300 square feet?
Yes, the maximum house size is still under 400 square meters.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry for all the trouble.
Councillor Gregan.
All my questions just got answered. Thank you.
All right. With that, we're going to call the question on the entire development permit panel proceedings. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried without opposition. Thank you. Someone move adjournment?
Move adjournment.
Okay, we're now adjourned. Thank you, folks.